Welcome to Jewish Cinémathèque, where we meet some of the important faces involved with films that tackle aspects of the Jewish experience. Today we meet Israeli documentary filmmaker Barak Heymann, the director and producer of Comrade Dov, whose over 24 producing credits include Mr. Gaga and Aida's Secret. Also joining us is the subject of Comrade Dov, Comrade Dov, recently retired Chaver Knesset, member of the Israeli Knesset, Dov Khenin. Welcome, gentlemen. It's really wonderful to have you here. Let me start with Barak. What attracted you? Why did you want to make this film about Dov?
So firstly, I met this guy in 2003 when I was a young journalist in a very little, small, urbanic magazine called 42 Degrees. And I fell in love with the guy. I was amazed by the fact that he is so full of life and optimism and good energy and good vibes, even though on a daily basis he is struggling and he is very much aware of how difficult and tough is our reality. And after some years of getting to know him closer and closer, I decided I want to make a film about him, because it was important for me to show to as many people as possible all over the world, but especially in Israel, how beautiful man he is and how beautiful things he's doing, even though so many Israeli, especially Israeli Jewish people, think that he's a traitor, that he's extremist, he's like crazy, he only likes the Arabs, all those stupid cliches that I'm very much against, and I wanted to shrink the gap between what is the majority of the people think about him and between who is Dov Khenin in real life.
You know, it's interesting. Most Americans, and in particular most American Jews, think of Israeli politics as almost a two. We know that there are many parties, but in our minds there are two parties. There's the left and maybe a couple of groupings of the left, and there's the right. And this notion of a communist, particularly a communist party, is sort of different and unusual. And as you well know, the whole idea of communism in the United States to this day is a real negative. So, Dov, how do you, when somebody says to you, you're a communist or you're a member of the Communist Party, in the United States, we've jailed people for that.
Yes, in the United States, to speak about someone as communist is like, you say, Arab lover in Israel. Actually, the big question is, you can use whatever title you would like, but it is very, very important to realize what is under the title. By communism, there are some people who think we mean, for example, Stalin, or we mean North Korea. For me, these two despotic regimes are very far away from my ideals and from my perception of social justice. But, speaking in this, atmosphere of discussing in a Jewish tradition, inside the Jewish tradition, I call myself someone who hasn't given up the idea of Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam is not something small. It's not.
Explain for the audience that don't. Tikkun Olam means?
Means changing the world. Changing the world, and not change the small details. Just skip this button and change it with another one, but change the system. The system whereby 28 ultra-rich people have more money and more richness than 4 billion people who are living in extreme poverty in our planet. So we do need a deep change. Now, this deep change we need in our society, in Israel, in the United States, and elsewhere, is an ongoing struggle of humanity. And in this struggle, there were chapters that in them there were, very, very deep mistakes, crimes being made in the name of justice. We should learn all these things. We would not like to repeat, not the mistakes and not the crimes, but we should not give up the idea of changing the world.
So you decided, by the way, I mean, in all fairness, the Communist Party in the 50s was aligned with Stalin. But you made a decision. I mean, here you are, you're a graduate, you're an attorney, you're teaching in the law faculty in Israel. You decide to do a PhD in political science at Tel Aviv University. So you're an academic, you're an attorney, you could make a lot of money. But what do you decide to do? And it's great how Barak sort of captures this and shows your growth and your progression. You decide to be a member of the Knesset because you want to make these changes?
Yeah.
And is it real? Can you make those changes?
Well, actually, you know, that is a very, very interesting story, and I think in a way it's a telling story about Israeli politics. Because I was elected to the Knesset back in 2006, sorry. I was a member of a small opposition party outside of the national consensus of Israeli society.
That was the Hadash Party?
That was the Hadash Party.
Which was also the Communist Party.
Which was also the Communist Party. So I was in the, I would say, in the left-wing corner of Israeli parliament. However, from that position, I was able to initiate and to pass through more than 100 different laws that, as we speak now, are part of Israeli legislation. Huge number of laws. I was able to pass them from this small corner in the left wing of Israeli Knesset.
So are you saying that the Israeli system works? Because here you are, I mean, if you're an independent in the United States, you have to really side with one party or another to get anything done. Here you are in the corner, small party, and yet you're saying you were able over the course of a dozen years to get all, by the way, and from what I understand, not only enact over 100 bills, but stop other bills that were very negative bills from actually taking place.
Yeah. Now, we are speaking about numbers, but it is also very important to understand that the numbers are not so important. The contents of these legislations are extremely important. For example, Israeli Clean Air Act is a law that I was able to pass through in Israeli Knesset. That is to speak about an environmentalist law, LGBT rights law, human rights laws, social rights laws, feminist laws, extension of the maternity leave in Israel. All these pieces of legislation are major achievements for me. And I think you point to a very, very interesting feature of Israeli politics. And in order to understand this feature, we should realize something that is negative about Israeli politics, but there is a positive side to this negative feature. Israeli politics is very, very much centered around only one axis, and that is the axis of war and peace, Jews and Arabs. This axis is very, very rigid. It is very complicated for you as a politician to move someone along this axis. But whenever you get out of this axis to different issues, feminism, environmentalism, social issues, then many Israelis and many politicians will consider the other issues as non-political. In a way, it's a problem because you cannot really create a meaningful and interesting debate in the Knesset about environment. People are not really interested about this subject. But on the other hand, if you are creating initiatives on environment, on social issues, on human rights, on feminist issues, then because they are not regarded as political, you are in a way more able to move and to initiate and to succeed.
Fascinating. You know, in the film Barak, you follow Dov you see him loved, you see him cheered, you see him booed. And you're in there making this film did anyone put any kind of barrier or stumbling blocks in front of you? Were you given free access to everything? I know at one moment you're trying to film Israeli police going in and they're constantly closing the blinds on you and you're pushing the blinds apart. But I mean, were there any impediments, anything holding you back?
No, actually not. I could film everything I wanted. The only border I had to face was maybe the fact that Dov, in the first day when I was shooting him, told me, I give you green light to do whatever you want. It's your film. You're filming it. You're editing it. It's your creation. I'm totally in your hands. Do whatever you want, but leave my family alone. They didn't choose to be part of the political and
it's
public life.
Yeah, I had no idea that Dov had a wife and 3 sons.
So he has, but he didn't want them to be part of the film. I actually thought that I will be able to manipulate him.
The filmmaker, the manipulator.
To drag them inside the story, like I usually do in previous films. But Dov is a very stubborn guy, and he didn't let it happen. But I have to say that now when I watch the film, and I watched it like hundreds of times in the past year, I don't miss it, and it's not really what is interesting for me. I decided to make a film about a politician, about an activist, about a human rights defender, about someone who does and say things which I think are very, very, very important to be said and to be known. And his personal family story is not as interesting as his public activities.
You know, it's interesting, and I believe you did it. There are little pieces here where you're talking in a very quiet background way about the issue of censorship. There's one moment where you see Dov storming into a committee, and they're talking about the fact that the Cinémathèque should be closed down because they're showing Nakba films about from the Palestinian perspective of the 48 war. And they're furious because the Cinémathèque gets government funds. And that's the discussion. Dov, of course, has his own agenda. He's got these wonderful factory workers who've now all of a sudden find themselves out of work. So here you have this communist who's fighting for the worker, and he comes storming in and he said, I presented this to you weeks ago.
Yes, it was.
Why are you doing this? This came up yesterday. So in the course of that, clearly you're showing us this incredibly powerful member of Knesset who's not prepared to be quiet, but at the same time, are you dealing with the issue of censorship, and is that a concern of yours? I know at one point, censorship was, even an issue that went to the Israeli Supreme Court.
Sure.
So, I mean, is that a concern?
Actually, as a lawyer, before becoming a Knesset member, I presented a playwright, an Israeli playwright, in a very, very important appeal to Bagatz, to our Supreme Court, back in the 80s. And the ruling of the High Court in that case decided actually to totally abolish censorship on theater plays in Israel.
You mean up until that point, the government could
censor plays in theater. Yeah.
So you took on this case?
I took on this case, and I'm very proud of it. It's my, part of my legal resume.
And did that then carry on to cinema?
Actually, it did carry on to cinema. We do not have real censorship on cinema, but we have other challenges, other kinds of attacks on our freedom of speech in culture. What our Minister of Culture is trying to do at the moment is to say, well, I'm not censorship you, but if you are doing something that I do not like, you will not get any kind of public funding for it. Now, culture is very, very much dependent on public funding. If you take out public funding, then how culture can be developed? So at the moment, the real danger is this kind of separation. Do whatever you like, but we, the state, will not fund something that the government does not like. Of course, this is very problematic because the state is not the government. The minister, our Minister of Culture, treats Israeli budget as if it is her own political budget, and if she loves something, she will give the money.
It seems to be a problem all over the world.
Yeah.
It's a very common joke in Israeli.
What is that?
That as a filmmaker, you desire the Minister of Culture to kind of boycott you because this is the best PR you could get. Everybody talk about your film and everybody run to the cinema to watch it. So I'm very much depressed that she didn't say anything about our film. Maybe because she likes Dov so much.
Yeah. One of the things that you were able to do, Barak, I think in a very powerful way, here you have this, I mean, I don't know how to describe Dov. You need a full-length film like you've presented to be able to do so. He's there with the workers, okay, Communist Party. He's there with the Arab parties. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Hadash joined with 3 Arab parties to create a coalition of sorts.
Yeah.
And you also show some of the young Israeli Arabs saying, we don't want this old Jewish guy, this white Jewish guy. You know, there are a lot of similarities. Jews were pushed out of the civil rights movement by African Americans at a certain point because it's not your problem, it's ours. And they're saying, why is this guy defending us? Why is he fighting for Israeli Arab rights? We should be doing it. He doesn't understand us, although he does.
Even though it's not exactly what she's saying. She's not asking why he should defend our rights, we should do it ourselves. She's saying in some ways he's doing it in a way which I don't respect.
Meaning?
He's doing it maybe in a gentle way. Or
a soft way.
A soft way. He should be much more hard. He should be much more aggressive. He should be much more loud. And this is, I think, a very fair debate. She has the right to think like this. She's not representing necessarily another Israeli Arabs. There are many people who think like her, Arabs and Jews, and there are many people who think completely the opposite of her, both Jews and Arabs. But this is an interesting debate. One of the things I like and appreciate the most about Dov is his ability, which is very rare, to be able to talk and to touch and to get close to people who think very, very, very different than him. And we are now going through all of Israel with this film. We already had almost 100 Q&As, like public discussions, with this Comrade Dov.
Really?
All over Israel. And some of the people we meet...
With hundreds of people coming to see a documentary. You know, this is a phenomenon that really surprised me totally. I told my wife, after the film came out, I told my wife, you should be prepared. We will have, 4 or 5 events. And I promised Barak to come. And so it's 100 as we speak now. All over the country, from the north to the south, areas of more liberal, left-wing tendencies and areas with many conservative and religious people, and to see the reactions of different people to this film, this is something I really...
Positive reaction, negative reaction?
Well, the reactions are, for me, very interesting and mostly very positive. For example, there was a man sitting in the front row of the film, a religious one. He was relatively old, and when the film, finished and we began the Q&A, he said, "Well, you have to know, I came to this film totally by mistake. I came with my wife. There were no tickets left, and the person there in the office told me, well, there is this film about friends. In Hebrew, comrade and friend is the same. So, and I love friends, so I entered the film. But you have to know that when in the TV, when I see Arabs, or left-wing people, I closed my television because I do not like these people. And seeing this film in a way changed something inside me because as he said, I love this person. And I have problem with my own opinions and his opinions. And that is, an example of things that we can see actually regularly in many, many forms. And for me, it is a proof of the power of good cinema, because I had opportunities to speak with people before in many, many occasions. And I try to speak, and not to quarrel with people, but to try, I always try to speak with them. But this kind of reaction, which is in a way very, very emotional and from something very deep in the fabric, the inner fabric of a person, this is something, to my mind, very much connected with the magic of cinema.
Let's take a break now and look at a clip from Barak Heymann's film, Comrade Dov. In this clip, we have Dov is being interviewed by a very traditional, very orthodox, ultra-orthodox man. He's a Chabadnik. Let's take a look.
אני בעצם צאצא של האדמו"ר הזקן. אני קרוי דוב בר. על שם מה? בטח.
זה הפתעה, פצצה זה. רגע, זה אני רוצה שתגבים אצל מולי. בוא רגע, אביחי. בוא רגע, צלם לי את זה. עכשיו, רק על חב"ד, רגע.
רק על חב"ד, יאללה.
יש וידאו? יש וידאו. אוקיי, עכשיו זה נטו לחב"ד. אז חבר הכנסת דב חנין מהרשימה המשותפת, אתה עכשיו מנחית פה פצצה, אתה מפתיע אותנו. אתה אומר שסבא אחד שלך הוא מתנגד, סבא שני?
חב"דניק.
חב"דניק.
כן, סבא אלתר שלי, יעקב אלתר, היה אחד מראשי חב"ד בארץ.
איזה ניגון אתה זוכר?
תשמע, אני לא יכול להגיד לך שאני כל כך טוב בזמרה.
אין בעיה, אין בעיה.
אבל אתה מכיר למשל את כי לא יואה, כי לא נואה, כי לא נואה, אדיר במלוכה, אדיר במלוכה, בחור קל לך, גדודיו יאמרו לך, לך ולך, לך כי לך, לך אף לך ממלכה.
חבר'ה, זה דב חנין, לא סתם. הוא משלנו, הוא מאנש. הוא חב"דניק, כן?
יאללה, תודה יקירי.
טוב, רגע, מה עם תפילין?
יש כוח.
טוב, מה עם תפילין?
כשיבוא שלום, אני מבטיח להגיע לכאן במיוחד אליך. בסדר.
תפילין יביאו שלום.
So, in the course of this film, you show him, and he's meeting Arabs, he's meeting middle-class people, he's meeting poor people, he's at the destruction of an Arab town because it's now been, there's a decision by the government to knock it down. There's also a point where certain people are asked, certain Israelis are asked to be evicted. You're there with your handheld camera in there being pushed around. At one point, one of your colleagues, one of the members of Knesset is actually wounded in an attack.
Ayman Odeh.
Were you afraid at any point for yourself?
No, I was not afraid.
There were bullets flying.
Yes, I was not afraid of myself at any point. I have to admit that when I was filming, I think it was December 2014, this neighborhood in the north of Tel Aviv, where they evacuated the Israeli Jewish people from this piece of land, which used to be a Palestinian village back 70 years ago, because now it became very, very, very rich piece of land. And they just kicked them out without even giving them compensation or giving them a very funny compensation. That was a very, very sad moment. I was not scared that something will happen to me physically, but I remember being very sad for weeks after because I have never evidenced such a violent, and this is literally 5 minutes drive from my house. And those crazy things are happening there. And I saw Dov. It was maybe the first time I saw him really down. And this is also was leading to this interview with Dov later when he's just about to tear, because sometimes you just feel so
Powerless.
against this viciousness.
But here you are, you're a member of the government, and you're you're a
Of the
licensed
Knesset, member-
of the Knesset, and you're a licensed attorney, and there was nothing that could be done?
Well, that for me was a very, very difficult question. And I think that I did whatever I could, but whatever I could was not enough. And for me, that was a very, very sad and difficult moment to realize that doing whatever I can, not only as a lawyer, but as a member of Knesset, as you said, it is not enough. It was not enough for these people who are facing such a big injustice.
And this is also for me, by the way, optimistic, not only depressing, because this is part of what the film is trying to show, that there is a different way of being a politician. While we are used to the fact, not only in Israel, also in the United States and in Europe and in many other countries, that politicians are betraying the trust they received from people who voted for them, and once they were voted, they just don't care for those people anymore. Dov is completely the antithesa. He's completely the opposite of it. He's working very, very hard, nights and days, for people, like those people who were evacuated from their homes, who were never going to vote for him, and who will probably never vote for him because they are more into the right and he's so much in the left. But still he's working very hard for them and taking it as a personal failure when they are being evacuated from their home. So it's very sad, it's very depressing, but it's also a very important message that being a politician doesn't necessarily mean to be opportunist and to be funny.
Yeah, I loved the fact that you inserted clips, different shots of Dov hugging everyone. I mean, everyone loved this guy. I mean, politically, he's your opposite. You hate his politics, but you like the man and you have a discussion with him. Israel is a democracy, and I love the fact that this is, yes, there are difficult moments, but all in all, it's a very optimistic story because the fight continues. And as you're telling me, with 100 screenings in just a few months after the film is finished, the discussion continues, the dialogue continues, and both of your efforts, you as a filmmaker and you as a community organizer at this point, making a difference. Thank you so much for doing what you do and for making this amazing film. It's really been a delight for me to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. And we're especially pleased to remind you that thanks to a generous matching gift from the Cayley family, every new or increased dollar you donate to JBS will be worth double to JBS. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please, indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.